All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. It's the fourth Sunday of Lent in the Orthodox Christian calendar,
Yeah,
but it's more than just that, right?
definitely. Yeah.
It's a chance to dive into the wisdom of a pretty remarkable figure,
Hmm.
St. John Climacus, and of course his famous work, The Ladder of Divine Ascent.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're going to be drawing on some insights from an Orthodox Christian blog.
Okay, great.
And our mission here, is pretty simple. We really want to get to the bottom of why this particular Sunday matters and how St. John's teachings can really speak to us, anyone, like about personal growth, wherever you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think, thinking about this Sunday, the fourth Sunday of Lent as just another Sunday, I think we'd be missing out on something really special. It's really a time set aside to focus on this figure, St. John Climacus, a 7th century monk, and his insights into the human spirit, the journey of transformation. I think they're so relevant for us even today as they were, back then.
Yeah, that's wild to think about. I mean, just to start off, like, who was this guy? St. John Climacus, our source, it tells us he was a 7th century monk. And I immediately just picture, like, someone living this really secluded life. Was that accurate?
Yeah, for a big part of his life, it definitely was. He spent a whopping 40 years, actually, as a hermit on Mount Sinai. Can you imagine that? Like the level of solitude, the dedication.
Oh my gosh, that's intense. 40 years as a hermit.
It is, and but later on in his life, he actually became the abbot of the monastery there. So he went from the solitary contemplation to actually leading a community, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, like really shifting gears, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was actually his experiences during that time, right?
Yeah.
Both as a hermit and later as an abbot, that led to him writing the Ladder of Divine Ascent at the request of his fellow monks.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like he one day decided, hey, I'm going to write a book.
No, not at all. It was, they really saw his wisdom, his spiritual wisdom, as so valuable that they asked him to write it down, like give us a guide. And what he created was really special. It was it's structured like a ladder with 30 different steps on it.
30 steps. Why 30? Our source mentions that this actually mirrors the 30 years of Christ's life before he began his public ministry.
Right.
What is that connection significant?
I think so. I think it's a really powerful parallel. It suggests that the journey outlined in the ladder, is meant to, in some way, reflect this period of preparation and spiritual growth that Christ himself went through. So those 30 steps, they're not just random. Each one focuses on a specific virtue to cultivate or maybe a vice to overcome as you're going up this ladder towards a deeper relationship with God.
So it's like a real blueprint, like a real detailed plan for spiritual development. And it doesn't start out, gently, let's put it that way. The blog actually quotes the opening lines of the ladder. God is life and salvation for all whom free will is given as a gift. That's a pretty direct statement, right, about our role in all of this.
It is. It really puts the responsibility right on us right from the get-go. We've been given free will, and every moment, it's a choice. Are we going to move towards this life and salvation, or are we going to stray? And that's really, what it's about, recognizing that constant tension between our choices and our spiritual direction.
So now, why is this particular Sunday in Lent dedicated to St. John? Lent, as our source reminds us, is a journey of repentance and transformation. Mm-hmm. So how does John's ladder, how does it tie into this Lenten journey that we're on?
Well, think of it this way. Like this Sunday is almost like a pit stop, like a moment of encouragement, a little bit of refocusing during Lent. Because spiritual growth, it's not always easy. It takes effort. It takes intentionality. And St. John's Ladder, I think it provides this great framework for understanding that effort. The blog points out this contrast between like the uphill climb of spiritual progress versus how easy it is to just sort of slide into sin,
It's like trying to swim upstream, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to just floating with the current.
Yeah.
And that active effort, right, to climb toward holiness, as St. John kind of outlines it takes work, right? The blog emphasizes constant vigilance, prayer, and self-discipline.
Yeah. You really have to be aware of what's going on inside. You have to actively be engaging in practices that are going to help you to grow spiritually. And this lines up so well, with Christ's own teachings on perseverance. Like, the blog reminds us, he who endures to the end will be saved. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And St. John's Ladder is like, your training guide for that marathon.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a sense of who St. John was, the context of his work, right? Let's dive into some of the actual like key lessons from the ladder. And the
Yeah.
first one that really like popped out at me was this idea of self-knowledge through others. It's this concept that how we react to other people, it can actually reveal a ton about ourselves. That's kind of a head scratcher, right?
It is. It's really powerful. St. John, he suggests that the things that bother us the most in other people, they often actually reflect, stuff about ourselves that we haven't really fully like acknowledged or dealt with, or it's like other people, they kind of act as mirrors,
Yeah.
showing us our blind spots.
Yeah, yeah. And the blog quotes him as saying, the worst feature in our enemy is our own bad feature. That's a pretty strong statement, right?
Yeah.
It makes you really think about like why do certain things that other people do just like get under your skin? If someone's always late and it drives you crazy, could it be that you secretly struggle with time management yourself?
It's very possible.
Or maybe you have this hidden desire for people to wait on you?
Right, right. And that's the kind of self-inquiry that St. John he encourages. Like instead of just focusing on the other person and what they're doing wrong, we need to stop and ask ourselves, why is it having this effect on me? What is it about this that's pushing my buttons? And that discomfort can be a really valuable clue to our own inner struggles.
That leads so well into this next key lesson, love
Yeah.
your neighbor and your enemy. I mean, if we can start to see like, hey, we're all kind of wrestling with our own imperfections, it must become easier to have compassion for others, even the ones that are tough to deal with,
Yeah, absolutely. When we start to see our shared humanity, our common struggles, it just opens us up to empathy. The
Mm.
blog highlights that true spiritual growth. It's so connected to humility, to forgiveness, to love, and
Yeah.
not just love for the people that are easy to love, right? But even for our enemies, it's about seeing the potential for goodness in everyone, in ourselves included.
Yeah. And it's a good reminder that our spiritual journey, it's not like we're just doing this by ourselves. It's not a solo mission.
Yeah,
How we interact with other people, that's part of the progress, right?
totally.
So then we get to the role of prayer and fasting. And the blog makes this really interesting connection to the transfiguration. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, so the transfiguration, right? This is the moment where Christ's divine glory was revealed to his disciples. And in a similar way, prayer and fasting, they're seen as spiritual disciplines that can help to reveal our own potential for transformation, like our own inner light.
Yeah.
They create space for God's grace to work more effectively in our lives. They kind of strip away the distractions, allow us to connect on a deeper level.
And the blog even brings in this quote from the gospel, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And that really highlights, I think, that even when we're engaging in these practices, it's not about our own strength alone.
Yeah.
We constantly need God's help. It's like admitting that we're works in progress, right?
Exactly, yeah. Prayer and fasting, they're not about us, achieving some perfect state through sheer willpower, but it's more about cultivating humility,
Hmm.
dependence on God, recognizing that true growth comes from his grace working in us, not just from our own efforts.
Now, the church, they also honor St. John with specific hymns,
Mhm.
and the blog includes the Troparion and the Kontakion. For someone who might not be familiar with these, what are those? What's their purpose?
So these are liturgical hymns that are sung during church services to honor Saint John Climacus. They're kind of like these concise little theological poems that capture the essence of his life, his spiritual achievements, his teachings. So, for example, you've got the Troparion, Tone 1, and it calls him a dweller of the desert, an angel in the body. It highlights his asceticism, his spiritual purity, and it mentions how he received heavenly gifts through fasting, vigil, and prayer. And this led to him healing the sick and the souls of those drawn to you by faith. So it's really celebrating him as this example of spiritual power gained through dedication and discipline.
So these hymns are a way for the church to remember him, to learn from him, right?
Yes, exactly.
The Kontakion Tone 4, it also seems to carry a really important message.
It does, yeah. The Kontakion, it says, "The Lord truly set you on the heights of abstinence to be a guiding star, showing the way to the universe." So it's emphasizing his role as a spiritual guide, someone whose example, whose teachings, they really illuminate the path for others. And the idea of him being a guiding star, I think that's a powerful image, It speaks to his lasting influence.
Yeah, a guiding star. I like that. So now, the blog raises this question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. Why should non-monks read the Ladder, right?
Hmm.
Because let's be honest, most of us, we're not living in a monastery.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, while the latter did come out of this monastic setting, its core insights are so universal. It's about human nature, the temptations we face, the virtues we need to cultivate. That's something everyone deals with.
Right. Yeah.
And the fundamental desire to grow, to overcome our weaknesses, to live a more meaningful life, that goes beyond any specific lifestyle. Whether you're a monk or you're, navigating the complexities of modern life, it's all the same. The journey from those negative patterns to positive ones, from selfishness to love, that's a human experience.
So it's not about trying to replicate this, extreme lifestyle of the 7th century monk. The blog actually points out some key principles for spiritual progress that are relevant to anyone. Things like patience, perseverance, trust in God.
Exactly. Yeah. Spiritual growth, it's rarely this sudden thing. It happens little by little, step by step, and we're going to stumble along the way. That's part of it. But perseverance, that commitment to keep trying, that's so vital.
Yeah.
And underpinning all of this, is this essential trust that God is there to support us. He's there to give us strength when we feel like we have none left.
Bringing it back to our Lenten journey, the blog offers some really practical takeaways. It encourages us to take that idea of self-knowledge through others to heart.
Right.
Right? It says, examine your heart. What weaknesses do you see in others that may reflect your own? That's deep, man.
It is. It is. It's a way to actually apply St. John's wisdom to our own lives, particularly during this time of reflection. And it's about turning our judgments of others into opportunities for us to look at ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And it also reinforces the importance of, the traditional Lenten disciplines. It urges us to persist in prayer and fasting. Those are tangible things that we can do.
They are, and they're not just empty rituals either. They're powerful tools that can help us to become more aware of God's presence and more resilient, when we're faced with temptation.
Yeah. And finally, there's this powerful call to action. Keep climbing salvation is a lifelong ascent toward God.
Yeah.
It's a great reminder that this isn't about reaching some destination, checking something off a list. It's about the journey, the ongoing journey of growth and transformation.
Exactly, yeah. And that concluding hope that St. John Climacus will guide us, rung by rung until we reach the heavenly glory Christ promises to those who endure. I think that offers a real sense of hope, a sense of encouragement for that climb. It's a long climb, but we're not alone.
This has been a really insightful deep dive
Yeah.
with the 4th Sunday of Lent and the wisdom of St. John Climacus. It's amazing how these reflections from a 7th century monk can still offer so much guidance for us today.
I agree. I think St. John's Ladder, it remains a powerful and practical guide for anyone who's seeking to understand themselves better and to grow in their spiritual journey, no matter where they are in that journey.
So as a final thought for today, and we'll leave you with this. Think about a personal goal or challenge you're facing right now. How might this idea of spiritual steps or gradual progress, how might that apply to your situation? And consider the people who kind of rub you the wrong way sometimes, the people that irritate you the most. What might their flaws be reflecting back to you about your own inner landscape, This deep dive into St. John Climacus, it offers some really timeless wisdom on the journey of self-improvement, which, in our own way, we're all on that journey. Right?
We are. It's a lifelong journey.
So until next time, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.